It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind that usually felt safe and familiar. Maria had woken up to the soft sunlight spilling through the curtains of her bedroom, the faint hum of birds outside creating the usual calm. But today, something felt off. There was an unease in her chest she couldn't shake, a tension that didn't belong in her otherwise peaceful home. She tried to ignore it at first, thinking it was just her imagination running wild. Maria had recently been away for a short trip, visiting a friend in the next town. It was meant to be a simple, refreshing break, a few days to breathe and clear her mind. Her son Thomas had promised to check in regularly, and she trusted that her home would be just as she had left it. But as she parked her car in front of the familiar driveway, a strange feeling hit her. Something was not right. The front door looked different. It wasn't the welcoming door she had left. The lock, shiny and new, glinted under the morning sun. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She reached for the handle, and of course, it didn't budge. She tried again, hoping maybe she was just fumbling, but the lock was completely changed. Panic began to creep in. Who could have done this? She had a key, she always did, but it didn't matter anymore. The door was shut firmly against her. She backed away slowly, scanning the house from the outside. Her mind raced. Could it be a mistake? Had Thomas hired someone to change the locks for some reason? Or could it be her daughter-in-law Lily? Maria's stomach sank at the thought. She had always sensed a subtle tension between them, but she had never imagined it would come to this. Maria's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She called Thomas immediately, her voice trembling with both fear and urgency. Thomas, the door. It's locked. I can't get in. There was silence on the other end. Then a faint, uneasy laugh. Mom, I'll figure it out. Don't worry. His voice wasn't reassuring. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Something was very wrong, and it wasn't going to be simple. As she waited for Thomas or anyone who could explain what had happened, neighbors began to notice her standing at the curb, looking distressed. One kindly old man waved, asking if she needed help. Maria nodded mutely, unable to speak, the words caught in her throat. She had never felt so helpless in her own home. The minutes stretched on like hours, and then Maria heard a sound that made her both hopeful and nervous. The low rumble of a police car approaching. Deputies were stopping by, responding to a report about a disturbance at her address. Maria's hope surged. Maybe they could help her get inside. Maybe they could clarify why she was being kept out of her own home. But as the deputies stepped out of their car and approached, Maria realized this wasn't going to be straightforward. They asked her name, her relation to the house, and why she was standing outside. Maria explained everything, her voice shaking but steady. She told them about the trip, the changed lock, her worries about Lily, and her confusion about Thomas's absence. The deputies exchanged glances that made Maria's stomach knot even tighter. One of them spoke slowly, carefully, as if choosing words that wouldn't worsen the situation. Ma'am, we'll need to clarify a few things before anyone can go inside. Maria's heart pounded. She felt as if the walls of her own home were closing in, as if the place she had lived in for decades had suddenly become foreign, controlled by someone else. She glanced toward the door, imagining Lily behind it, smirking or just watching, confident that Maria couldn't enter. The thought made her hands clench into fists. She realized something crucial in that moment. This wasn't just about a door or a lock. This was about respect, about family boundaries, about being recognized as the rightful owner of her life and her space. And if the deputies were involved, it meant the situation had escalated far beyond her control. As the officer spoke, asking more questions, Maria couldn't help but feel a mixture of fear, anger, and determination. She wasn't going to let this go without a fight. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly anticipate, was that the truth of what had happened inside that house was far more complicated than she could imagine, and it was about to change everything. The scene was tense, charged with emotion, and filled with unanswered questions. Maria stood there, trembling, knowing that by the time this was over, nothing would be the same. And deep down, she feared that confronting her daughter-in-law would reveal secrets she wasn't prepared to hear. Maria stood on the driveway, her hands still clutching the phone like a lifeline. As the deputies began asking more questions, their calm, professional voices contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions inside her. Fear, confusion, and frustration swirled together. She could hardly believe that a day that had started so peacefully had now turned into a nightmare. Ma'am, one deputy said gently, we need to confirm ownership and who currently has access. Can you show any documents? Maria swallowed hard. She had deeds, utility bills, mortgage papers, everything proving the house belonged to her. But they were inside, locked inside. The reality of the situation hit her in waves. How could someone just take over her home while she was away? And more importantly, why? She looked toward the front door again. The new lock gleamed in the sunlight, an unspoken challenge daring her to act. She had lived in this house for decades. It held her memories, family dinners, laughter echoing through the halls, quiet nights with her late husband. And now, someone had turned it into a stranger's territory. The other deputy spoke up. We need to verify if anyone inside claims authority over the property. We can't force entry without clarity. Maria nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She couldn't explain how painful it felt to be treated like a stranger in her own home. She had raised her son here, and yet, in a single act, it seemed that Lily had rewritten the rules of the house. Just then, she noticed movement behind the frosted glass panels of the door. Lily appeared, carrying herself with that familiar air of confidence. She didn't seem nervous or guilty. If anything, she looked smug. Maria's heart sank. This was going to be difficult. "Mom," Lily said through the door, her voice deceptively calm. "I was just securing the house while you were away. You know, safety first." Maria clenched her jaw. Securing the house. By changing the locks, without telling anyone, the deputies stepped forward, their presence a buffer between the two women. "Ma'am," one said to Lily, "can you explain your relationship to this property?" Lily paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "I live here with my husband. We thought it would be safer if we handled things while she was gone," she said. Her tone was measured, almost rehearsed, but Maria could hear the undercurrent of defiance. Maria felt a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Lily, this is my home. I raised Thomas here. You don't just take over someone's house." The deputies looked between them, scribbling notes. Maria felt helpless yet determined. She knew she had to remain calm, even though every instinct in her screamed to shout, to force her way inside. She had to let the law work, at least for now. As the conversation continued, Maria began thinking of the events leading up to this moment. There had been small signs, minor disagreements with Lily, subtle comments about taking responsibility or handling things better. She hadn't paid much attention, thinking they were just personality clashes, but now, in the glare of reality, it all seemed like a warning she had ignored. Then, unexpectedly, one of the deputies asked Thomas to come on the phone. Maria handed the phone to them, her hands trembling. Thomas's voice was hesitant, awkward, almost guilty. "Mom, I didn't know she would. I thought it was temporary." Temporary. Maria's heart sank even further. How could anyone think it was temporary to lock someone out of their own home? She wanted to scream, to tell him how wrong this was, but the deputies intervened. "Let's keep calm. We need clarity before anyone makes decisions." The next few minutes were tense. Maria watched Lily's expression carefully. There was no remorse, only calculation. It became painfully clear. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Something deeper was at play, a struggle for control over her life and her home. Finally, the deputies suggested a temporary solution. No one would enter the house until documents could be verified, and they would remain on site until everything was clarified. Maria nodded, trying to breathe, trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken. She had imagined peaceful retirement days in her home, but now, her sanctuary had become a battleground. As she stepped back from the door, the deputies keeping watch, Maria realized something vital. She needed a plan, patience, and courage. She couldn't allow fear or anger to control her. If she wanted her home back and her dignity, she had to approach this carefully. And deep down, she also knew that confronting Lily, facing the betrayal, would be far more complicated than she could imagine. What had started as a simple act changing a lock was only the first step in a conflict that would challenge family bonds, trust, and the definition of home itself. Maria stood there, the morning sun warming her face, yet all she felt was the icy grip of uncertainty. The house behind her, once a symbol of comfort, now loomed like a puzzle she had to solve, one careful step at a time. Maria waited on the driveway, her hands folded tightly in front of her, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The deputies had explained the procedure. Before anyone could enter, ownership and legal authority had to be verified. It sounded logical, but to Maria, it felt like her life and memories were trapped behind a door that someone else controlled. Lily had retreated slightly, leaning casually against the wall beside the door. Her posture was deliberate, almost taunting, but Maria forced herself not to react. She needed to stay calm, to think strategically. The last thing she wanted was for emotions to get the better of her. The deputies spoke again, confirming that Thomas's presence was needed to authorize any immediate access. Maria's phone buzzed. It was Thomas calling back. This time, he sounded more serious. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't understand how serious this would get. I'll come over and sort things out with the deputies." Maria exhaled slowly, relief mingled with frustration. Why hadn't he considered this earlier? She had raised him to understand respect and boundaries. Yet here he was, unsure how to protect his own mother's home. Still, having him involved might help move things forward. As the minutes ticked by, Maria noticed the small details she hadn't paid attention to before. The front porch, which had once been tidy, now had boxes stacked neatly by the door, perhaps Lily's way of marking her presence. The welcome mat, once warm and inviting, looked strangely out of place, almost like a symbol of intrusion rather than hospitality. Every little change in the house felt like a subtle message. This was no longer hers. When Thomas arrived, the tension became almost unbearable. He was visibly uncomfortable, glancing between Maria, Lily, and the deputies. Maria felt a pang of sadness mixed with anger. She had always imagined Thomas as her protector, someone who would defend her when needed. But seeing him now, unsure and hesitant, was harder than facing Lily's defiance. The deputies called for all parties to provide identification and proof of authority. Maria handed over her documents, mortgage papers, utility bills, and the house deed. The deputies carefully reviewed each item, confirming that legally, the house belonged to her. Lily shifted uncomfortably, her expression a mix of surprise and irritation. "You see," Maria said quietly but firmly, "this house has always belonged to me. It's where I raised my son, where my husband and I built our life. Changing the locks doesn't change that." Lily opened her mouth to respond, but one of the deputies raised a hand. "Ma'am, we're still verifying details. Let's stay calm and let the process finish." Even as the deputies examined the documents, Maria couldn't help but think about the reasons behind Lily's actions. Was it greed, a need to control, or just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Maria wanted answers, and she wanted them now, but she knew she had to wait. Patience was the only way to resolve this without making the situation worse. Then one of the deputies spoke with a serious tone. "There's one more thing we need to confirm. Was there any change in living arrangements authorized legally? Any transfer of rights or permissions given?" Maria shook her head. "Absolutely not. I've never signed anything. This house has always been mine. I've never agreed to anyone taking control." Thomas looked at his wife, clearly frustrated. "Lily, why did you do this?" Lily hesitated, then said, I thought I was helping. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just thought it would make things easier." Maria's jaw tightened. "Easier for who? For you. Did you think I wouldn't come back? Did you think you could just take over my home?" The deputies watched silently, giving space for the tension to settle, but Maria could feel her pulse racing. Every moment felt like a test of her composure. Every glance between Lily and herself a reminder that this conflict was more than just a door. It was about respect, trust, and family boundaries. Finally, after carefully reviewing all the documents and speaking with both Maria and Lily, the deputies made their decision clear. Legally, the house belonged to Maria, and she had the right to access it immediately. Lily could not prevent her from entering. Maria felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The hard part wasn't over. Walking through the front door would be an emotional journey, a confrontation, a reclaiming of her home, and perhaps the beginning of difficult conversations she had avoided for years. As the deputies prepared to unlock the door, Maria took a deep breath, steadying herself for what awaited inside. She knew this was only the beginning of a story that would test her patience, her courage, and the strength of her family bonds. And with one final glance at Lily, Maria realized that facing the truth about what had happened inside her own home was going to be far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The deputies carefully unlocked the front door, and Maria felt a knot of tension in her stomach. After months of imagining this moment, she was finally stepping back into her home, but it didn't feel the same. Every step into the house brought a mixture of relief and shock, a swirl of emotions that made her chest tighten. The familiar smell of her home greeted her, but it was faint, almost overpowered by something else, the subtle scent of someone else's presence, a reminder that her space had been occupied without her consent. Maria's eyes scanned the living room first. Furniture was slightly rearranged, photographs moved to different places, and small items that she remembered placing carefully had been shifted. Every little detail screamed intrusion, and yet, it all seemed deliberate, as if Lily had wanted to leave her mark. Lily followed behind, pretending calm, but Maria could sense the tension radiating from her. Thomas stayed close to his mother, glancing nervously between them, unsure how to mediate. The deputies remained a few steps back, observing quietly, making sure no one acted impulsively. Maria walked slowly, her hand brushing over the arm of the couch, noting the subtle differences. Why would you move everything?" she asked softly, her voice shaking but controlled. She didn't want to yell, not yet. She wanted to understand. Lily hesitated. I thought it would be better this way. It felt more organized. I just wanted to help." Maria shook her head, disbelief and frustration mingling. "Organized? By taking over my home? By changing my locks without a word?" It wasn't just the physical changes that hurt, it was the message behind them. Maria realized that this wasn't just about a door or furniture. It was about respect, boundaries, and trust. Someone she had welcomed into her family had crossed a line. And now, she had to decide how to confront it. The deputies stepped forward, gently reminding everyone to remain calm. "Ma'am, you have the right to reclaim your home, but we recommend keeping the conversation civil." Maria nodded, taking a deep breath. She turned her attention to the kitchen, which had undergone more dramatic changes. New appliances gleamed under the sunlight streaming through the windows, and shelves were rearranged in a way that felt unfamiliar. Every adjustment was a reminder of the time she had been away, and of the audacity it took for someone to make her space feel foreign. Her gaze fell on a small stack of letters and bills on the counter. She picked one up, noticing that some payments had been redirected. Minor but unsettling changes she hadn't authorized. This was no longer just about physical space, it was about control, decisions made in her absence, and the assumption that her voice didn't matter. Thomas stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Maria's shoulder. "Mom, I didn't realize how far it had gone. I thought it was harmless." But his voice trailed off, guilt etched on his face. Maria sighed, letting the tension seep out slowly. She loved her son dearly, but she couldn't ignore the fact that he hadn't anticipated the consequences. "It's not just about harmless intentions," she said. "It's about trust. This home is more than walls and furniture, it's memories, our family history, and respect. And that was taken from me." Lily's face fell, her smugness gone, replaced by unease. For the first time, Maria saw a flicker of remorse. Though it was tentative, uncertain, she realized that this confrontation wasn't just for her, it was a lesson for all of them, about boundaries and respect, about understanding the impact of one's actions on others. The deputies remained nearby, watching carefully, giving Maria the space to reclaim her home on her terms. She walked slowly through each room, reclaiming each space, taking note of what needed to be restored and what could stay as a reminder of what had happened. By the time she reached her bedroom, Maria felt a sense of quiet determination. She had faced the lock, the intrusion, and the confrontation, and while her emotions were raw, she knew she had won the first battle. Her home was hers again. But the deeper work, healing relationships, restoring trust, and setting boundaries, was only beginning. Maria paused by the window, looking out at the familiar street. The deputies would stay a little longer, just in case, but she no longer felt the helplessness that had gripped her that morning. The house was hers, and though it had been tested, she had reclaimed it. And now, she knew that true ownership wasn't just about locks or doors, it was about standing up for yourself, even when it's painful and difficult. The house was quiet now, but the air felt heavy with unspoken words. Maria had walked through every room, her heart pounding at each step, taking in the subtle changes and the intrusion that had occurred during her absence. Every shifted picture frame, every rearranged shelf reminded her that her home had been temporarily taken over, and that her voice had been ignored. Lily stood awkwardly in the living room, avoiding eye contact. Maria could sense her hesitation, the uncertainty that had replaced her earlier confidence. For the first time, the daughter-in-law realized that her actions had consequences beyond the simple act of organizing or helping. Maria decided it was time to speak, to address the heart of the matter, rather than let resentment fester. "Lily," Maria said firmly, her voice calm but strong, "this isn't just about the locks or furniture. It's about respect for me, for my home, and for the life I've built here." Lily swallowed, her hands twisting nervously. I understand, Maria. I didn't realize. I just thought I was making things better while you were away." Maria's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained steady. "Better for whom? You were controlling something that doesn't belong to you. That's not helping, it's overstepping boundaries. You should have talked to me first." Thomas watched silently, guilt clear on his face. Maria could see that he was beginning to understand the weight of the situation. "Mom, I really didn't know it would go this far," he admitted. "I thought I was helping both of you, but clearly, I misjudged." Maria nodded, taking a deep breath. She realized that anger alone wouldn't resolve this. Communication and honesty were the keys. "This isn't just about punishment," she said softly. "It's about learning, about understanding that respect and trust are earned, and they can be broken in an instant if we're not careful." Lily's shoulders slumped. "I see that now. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, Maria. I didn't think it through." The deputies, who had been standing near the doorway, quietly observed the conversation. Their presence ensured that no one acted impulsively, but they gave Maria the space to guide this confrontation. Maria took a step closer to Lily. "You're part of this family, but being part of a family also means respecting each other's spaces, choices, and boundaries. I want you to understand that." Lily nodded, eyes glistening slightly. "I understand, Maria, I really do. I won't let this happen again." Thomas let out a small sigh of relief. The tension in the room, while not fully gone, had eased slightly. Maria felt a mixture of fatigue and satisfaction. She had faced the challenge, reclaimed her home, and confronted the person responsible, all while keeping her dignity intact. She paused for a moment and looked around the living room, now slowly returning to its rightful order. She realized that home wasn't just walls and doors, it was the memories, love, and respect that filled each space. And no matter how much disruption occurred, she still held the power to protect that dot. Maria then turned to Thomas. "I hope this teaches you both something. Family means supporting each other, yes, but it also means respecting each other's lives. We can't assume control over someone else's space, no matter how well-intentioned it seems." Thomas nodded, solemn. "I understand, Mom. I promise I'll be more careful." The deputies smiled slightly, satisfied that the immediate conflict had been resolved peacefully. They reminded everyone that while the legal matter was clear, maintaining respect within the family was equally important. Maria felt grateful for their support, though the victory was hers in more personal ways. As the day moved forward, Maria began putting small things back in their places, reclaiming not just the physical space but the sense of ownership and comfort that had been temporarily taken from her. She knew that some scars might remain, small reminders of the tension. But she also realized that forgiveness and understanding could heal more than anger ever could. By evening, the house had regained its warmth. Maria looked around, feeling a quiet sense of triumph. She had faced betrayal, confrontation, and fear, yet she had emerged with her home and her and as she settled into her favorite chair, she understood that boundaries weren't just rules. They were a reflection of self-respect, strength, and love for the life she had built. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light across Maria's living room. The house, which had felt foreign and unwelcoming just hours earlier, now carried a quiet sense of peace. Maria had walked through every room, restored what she could, and reclaimed not just the space, but the sense of control and comfort that had been stolen from her. She sat in her favorite chair, hands resting on the armrests, breathing deeply. The day had been exhausting, emotionally and mentally. She had faced fear, anger, and betrayal, but she had also discovered her own strength and resilience. What mattered most, she realized, wasn't just the house itself, it was the courage to stand up for herself, to assert her rights, and to demand respect from the people around her. Lily had retreated to the kitchen, quietly putting things back where they belonged. The daughter-in-law's earlier defiance had melted into thoughtful remorse. Maria had watched her closely, realizing that while trust had been broken, the willingness to learn and acknowledge mistakes could open the door to a better understanding. Thomas approached his mother and stood beside her, a mixture of relief and apology in his eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm really sorry. I never wanted you to feel unsafe in your own home. I should have spoken up earlier." Maria placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's all right, Thomas. You've learned something important today, and that's what matters. Respect isn't just about words, it's about actions. And I hope you'll remember that, not just with me, but with everyone in your life." The deputies had left, their job done, but their presence had left a sense of security behind. Maria felt a wave of gratitude for the support, yet the victory was hers. She had confronted the challenge calmly, faced the difficult emotions, and reclaimed what was rightfully hers. Later, as the evening settled in, Maria walked through the house once more. Each room told a story. Some rooms reflected the disruption, others held the memories she cherished. She realized that while physical objects could be moved or altered, the essence of home, the warmth, love, and memories could never truly be taken. That was hers, and hers alone. She paused at the front door, now restored with her own key in place. Maria turned the key, feeling a sense of closure and empowerment. This simple act symbolized more than entry. It represented her ability to reclaim her life and boundaries, to face challenges head-on, and to emerge stronger than before. Later that night, Maria sat with Lily and Thomas in the living room. The atmosphere was tentative but hopeful. They spoke openly, sharing feelings, regrets, and intentions. Maria understood that reconciliation wouldn't happen overnight, but small steps of honesty and acknowledgement could rebuild trust over time. "Thank you," Maria said softly to Lily. "I know you didn't intend harm, but it's important to understand the consequences of your actions. Let's try to move forward with respect and understanding." Lily nodded, a small but sincere gesture of acknowledgement. Thomas placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, silently supporting the effort toward reconciliation. Maria felt a quiet hope rising within her. Conflict had tested her family, but it had also revealed the importance of communication, boundaries, and empathy. Finally, Maria retreated to her bedroom. Sitting by the window and gazing at the quiet street outside, the tension of the day slowly faded, replaced with calm and reflection. She realized that challenges like this were part of life, and while they could shake her, they could also teach her valuable lessons about strength, patience, and dignity. Maria smiled faintly, knowing that her home was safe, her boundaries respected, and her voice heard. She had faced betrayal, confrontation, and fear, and she had come out stronger. This day had changed her, but it had also reaffirmed her resilience. As she closed her eyes that night, Maria understood something simple, yet powerful. Home isn't just a place, it's a reflection of respect, love, and courage. And no one can take that away when you stand firm in your truth.